Good afternoon, my lovelies. All right, so today I'm going to share a little story time. I asked, like I said, some of my prison girls, who we were incarcerated, some interesting folks that you guys might find interesting who we were incarcerated with. And here's a story about one of them. Now, there's lots more information to the story, so this is a short, quick version. If you want to know more, which I probably will add them anyway, I'll add other videos about it. All right, so I was incarcerated with a woman who was serving life for ending and chop, 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 her husband. And I had no idea really how crazy her story was until I kind of started really looking into it, like now, and reading all about it. And yeah, okay, it's a ride. All right, so her name was Rita Gluzman, and I was incarcerated with her at FMC Carswell. I went in 2013, and I was there at the maximum for 3 years, and then I went to the camp. So at that time, I knew that she had ended her husband because of rumors and people talk about it and stuff like that. And I even remember hearing that there was a book about her that's called Severed Relations. So if you want to go read that book, read the book. But I recently started to look in the case again, and the story is really kind of unbelievable. All right, so here we go. Hopefully I say these names right. Rita and her husband, Yakov Gluzman, had actually been together for decades. They'd been together for a very long time. And here's the part that makes the ending a little bit even more stranger than it already is. All right. So years before his ending, they were living in the Soviet Union, and Yakov had trouble getting permission to leave the country. So Rita fought to get him out, all right? She came to the United States, and she publicly campaigned for him, and even reportedly went on an 18-day hunger strike trying to get her husband released so that their family could be reunited, right? Eventually it worked, and they reunited, built a life together, and Yakov became a very successful scientist. Fast forward for more than 20 years, lots to that story, like I said, could be coming later. Their marriage was falling apart. He wanted a divorce. Rita was living in New Jersey while Yakov was living across the state line in New York. Okay? So as of April 1996, according to federal prosecutors and the testimony at her trial, Rita crossed from New Jersey into New York with her cousin, Vladimir, last name Zelenin. Hope that's right. They went to Yakov's apartment, and he was ended. I'll tell you more about how that happened if you want me to. Afterward, his body was chop, 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 and placed in some bags. Here's where everything kind of fell apart, all right? And I don't know how this guy got caught doing it, but he apparently wasn't very smart while he was getting rid of things. So the following morning, a police officer came across Rita's cousin while he was trying to dispose of Yakov, basically. Imagine being that officer and realizing what was inside those bags. That's crazy to me. That would if I was a police officer, that would totally, I'd be traumatized by that. I don't think I could ever forget seeing what was inside something like that. So her cousin was arrested, and of course he immediately started yapping, and he confessed and implicated Rita. Eventually, he became one of the government's most important witnesses against her, okay? Now, Rita maintained that she had nothing to do with it. She maintained that she wasn't responsible, that she didn't end her husband, but the jury did not believe her. There's another strange part to the case. She wasn't prosecuted under an ordinary state murder charge because prosecutors said that she traveled from New Jersey to New York to commit violence against her husband. The federal government prosecuted her under an interstate domestic violence provision of the Violence Against Women Act. I never heard that, okay? She became the first woman convicted under that federal provision. And in 1997, she was sentenced to life in federal prison, which eventually brings the story to FMC Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas. Years later, I ended up incarcerated with her. All right, so that's the part that's kind of surreal for me, because when you're incarcerated, you're kind of living alongside people every day. You see them eating and walking around the unit, going through their routines. And sometimes you don't really fully understand the extraordinary and sometimes really horrifying story that brought the person beside you into that place and into that prison. Yeah, so while she was there, I remember her. She was just a little lady. She wasn't mean. She was super nice. I remember if people please correct me, my FMC Carswell girls correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she worked in the kitchen at some point and ended up getting chopped right on out of there. But she was not, she was just this normal little old lady. She was really old at that point. Now, eventually, she was granted compassionate release in 2020 when she was 71 years old after serving 24 years. Because due to her declining health, it was a major factor. So yeah, that's the story of how I knew simply another inmate at Carswell that turned out to be the center of one of the strangest federal domestic violence cases that I've ever heard of. And when I really started reading about it, it's a really insane story and it's very interesting. And I have lots more stories about women at Carswell like that if you guys want to hear them. And I will also dive more into the details tomorrow. So thanks for watching. If you want to know more, let me know.